to show you a few common troubleshooting items for Adobe Premiere. Now, you've probably heard me talk about keyboard shortcuts a few times throughout these videos. Keyboard shortcuts are extremely helpful. The more you learn them, the faster you're going to move when using Premiere. But you may sometimes be confused as to what your shortcut options even are. So there's an easy way to find out. If you go up to the very top and click on where it says Premiere Pro, go down to Keyboard Shortcuts. This will open up a panel that actually looks like our keyboard, and on it, it will tell us what a lot of our different options are. We can see in this row here, many of the shortcuts I've already talked about. V for selection, C for razor, B for ripple edit tool, so on and so forth. Now you may notice some of these keys have a green bar going across them. This means that they have a secondary function. If I click on one of my keys and then hold down the shift button, you'll notice that suddenly a lot of my keys now have new information on them. They're informing me that if I hold down the shift button, these are now my options instead. If I release the shift and hold down the command button, same situation. These are now my commands that I have open to me if I hold down command. Same if I hold down option, and even control. If you've edited before on programs other than Adobe Premiere and you're more comfortable using those keyboard commands, you can actually change how your keyboard is set up. Up at the top of this window where it says Keyboard Layout Preset, right now mine is set to Adobe Premiere Pro default. If I click on it, I now have a couple other options, including an older version of Premiere, Avid, which is another editing program, and Final Cut, which is another popular editing program. So if I were more comfortable using a Final Cut keyboard, I could click there, and now my keyboard has been rewritten to give me a Final Cut based keyboard. Same if I wanted to edit with an Avid keyboard instead. We also have a list version of what our different keyboard options are on the left hand side here. I can see my selection, my track select backwards, razor tool. I also have different options down here which match up with everything up in my topmost toolbar. We can see file, edit, clip, sequence, so on, as well as some further actions that we haven't gotten into yet. The list is long and you definitely don't need to know every single one of these commands, but if there's a tool you use all the time, like the selection tool and the razor tool, it's good to at least know those keys. You also have the option to further customize your keyboard to your own preferences. Let's say that instead of the razor tool being on the C key and the selection tool being on the V key, you wanted it inversed, so that the selection tool is on C and the razor tool is on C. The way we do that is we find the command in this lower window. So here's the selection tool, and I'm just going to click it and drag it onto the key that I want it to be a part of. As soon as I did that, you can see that I now get a warning at the bottom informing me that C had been in use by the razor tool, and that now that I've done this command will no longer have a shortcut. And we can see that because next to the razor tool there is no longer a keyboard command. Instead, the selection tool now has two, both the C and V key. So all I need to do is just click the razor tool and drag it up to the V key. And now it has removed the selection tool from that keyboard shortcut and it's taken it for itself. If there are tools that you know you just never use, you could also go through here and just get rid of their keyboard shortcut. Say you never use the hand tool. All you have to do is click on its shortcut and then click the little X next to it. Now that tool no longer has a keyboard shortcut. This can be very useful if you have other tools that you use more often and you want to free up the key for it. Once you've edited your keyboard to your liking, you can actually save your keyboard by hitting Save As up at the top, and then change what your title for your keyboard is. I'll call this one My Name Keyboard, and hit OK. If I decide that I don't like this keyboard, I can also just go ahead and delete it by simply pressing delete. And then I'll go automatically back to the default keyboard. Once you're done, go ahead and press OK. The next troubleshooting item I want to show you has to do with audio, mainly with monitoring your audio. I've had previous students have problems where they're trying to get their Bluetooth-based headphones to connect to their Adobe Premiere, but for some reason they can't hear any sound with them. What you need to do is go back up to Premiere Pro again, go to where it says Preferences, and click on where it says Audio Hardware. This is where we can determine what our audio inputs and outputs are. Right now, my default output is just going straight through my computer speakers. I don't have any headphones plugged in, but if I were trying to use a Bluetooth headphone set, all I would have to do is click on default output and then select whatever output it is I want. Same with an input. If I had a professional level microphone plugged into this, then I could use that instead. Once you have that set the way you want to, you can just press OK. This preferences panel can give us a lot of other options as well. We can go under appearance and change the actual brightness of our program and some of the other preferences there. Under autosave, we can determine how frequently we want our project to save. Right now mine's set to every 15 minutes. You can also determine if you want a copy of it to save to the Creative Cloud, and further options that will allow you to customize your experience while utilizing Premiere. Once you have it the way you want to, press OK. A common issue that I see for people when they're first starting Premiere, they often accidentally leave a single frame of black when they make cuts. You can see one that I made just here, where it looks as if it's blinking to the next image. When you're zoomed in, you can see the cut, but when you're zoomed out, it's hard to see. There's a way to very quickly make sure all of your gaps are closed before you end up exporting anything. The way we do that is just to hit Command A so that we select everything, go up to Sequence, and press Close Gap. And automatically, any gap we have open will close for us. The last troubleshooting item that I want to show you for today is how to reconnect media. So while we can see our footage within Premiere, the program itself is not saving our footage into this Premiere file. If I look at the information on my actual Premiere file, you can see that it's extremely small. Mine's only 36 kilobytes. The reason for this small file size is that Premiere is not actually saving your media into the program. It's just making a placeholder for it and then attaching the media separately. What this means is that if I move where my media is actually located on my computer, it'll disconnect from the program. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to go into my Finder, and I'm going to go ahead and find the clip that I'm using within my program. Right now it's this one called Nature. Watch what happens when I move it out of its current file folder. It immediately disconnects from the program, and suddenly Premiere doesn't know what it's supposed to be showing me. I can still see that I have a clip in my timeline, but right now it's not linked to anything. This is going to be a problem that you encounter anytime you move your folders, especially if you're going from one computer to another. The way we fix this is by going into our footage library and right-clicking on the clip itself. Once we do this, we can see that we have a couple of options such as replace footage and link media. I'm going to go ahead and use link media for this because I'm not trying to change what clip I'm actually attaching to. I just want to reattach to my original clip. And I'll end up with a pop-up like this. If I had moved computers, this pop-up would have appeared for me as soon as I opened up the file. As you can see, it's telling me what my clip name is, what the file name is, and what my original file path was, which is where my file had been saved. In order to relink it, I press the button locate, and right now it's immediately taking me to the file it had originally been in. I already know that it's no longer in this file, so I'll go to where I've resaved it and just click on it and press OK, and automatically it relinked for me. Now, link media has a secondary, very useful function. I'm going to go ahead and import a couple of other clips from that same file folder, and I'm going to bring them into my timeline. Watch what happens when I move all of them. Now, in my Finder, I'm going to go ahead and move all of these files into a different folder so that they all disconnect. Immediately, I get my pop-up informing me that there's missing data. If you notice down at the bottom, I have a few options about matching to file properties, including the file name and file extension, so if it's a .mov versus a .mp4, for example. I'm also getting options about whether I want to align it by timecode and relink others automatically. This align timecode one is extremely important. If you've already edited an entire timeline for yourself and you aren't aligning by timecode, you could end up having sync problems. What's useful about this link media, though, is this option here that says relink others automatically. Because we have this information about our file name and file extension automatically matching, watch what happens when I only try to reconnect my #1 tropical beach. I'm going to go ahead and press locate. I'm going to go ahead and move into the file that I know has this information in it. I'm going to click on one tropical beach and hit OK. Automatically, all of my files were linked for me. The reason for this is because even when unlinked, all of these clips had a unique name and extension on them. And so once it saw that in that file there were matching names and extensions, it knew to automatically reconnect them. You may have noticed that there is also an option to replace footage. This one's something you want to be a little careful with, namely if your footage is a different length than your original. For example, if I had this nature footage and then cut it down partway through, if I tried to replace the footage with only this section, I'm now not going to have any information for the last third of this clip. Where replace footage can be useful, though, is if you do color correction. Say I take this whole sequence and I decide to color correct the entire thing. I don't change any of the placements of any of the clips from within it, and I don't change the duration of this clip. All I've done is adjust the color. That would be a good time to go ahead and press replace footage instead, because most likely I would have given this a unique name, such as nature_color corrected, rather than the original name that it's known by. Another example of when replace footage can be helpful is if you change the file type. Right now this is saved as an MP4. If for some reason I changed it to a .mov, then I would need to replace that media as well. These are just a few useful troubleshooting items on Premiere that should help you in your future projects.